Well, it's a week later, and nothing really has changed for the Guardians. We're sitting here with a few preseason games and more free agents off the market. We're going to get into it. We're going to talk about who are the best free agents left. We'll talk about the report that the Guardians were in on Winker and Olson, and we talked about last week why neither of those happened, but we'll retouch on those and more on today's episode of Locked On Guardians.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
For those who don't know me, my name is Jeff Ellis. I've been the host on Locked On Guardians since its inception. Before then, I was the lead scout and prospect analyst for 24/7 and Scout. I actually took over for Kylie McDaniel at Scout. Funny story, I remember once going into the comp accounts and seeing Brian Cashman's name in there. I think I mentioned this on here before, but it's still funny to me to think that, Cashman got a comp account. He couldn't afford an account. My co-host is here with me. I'm going to just... There he is. He's hanging out. Doesn't have much to say, but I know people have been talking about the co-host on my Twitter. So there's a shot of him hanging out. If he has anything to say, I'm sure he will let you know during the show. I want to thank you for making Locked On Guardians your first listen today and every day, wherever it is you get podcasts. We are back to 5 days a week. So please remember to download daily, rate and review. It really helps the show. Subscribe on YouTube as well if you can. All those are really important ways you can help this little podcast continue to grow. Let's get us back consistently into the top 100 podcast, and let's start pushing back in the top 50. Remember, we got into the top 30 once even, so let's keep at that. So basically we got the official news that the Winker deal fell apart because the Guardians weren't willing to take on Eugenio Suarez's contract. That makes sense. That is logical. That is what I stated on this very show, and I talked about recently, Matt Olson. That one fell apart when the Guardians were chasing because they don't have a catcher prospect of the level of Shane Langoliers. And more importantly, I think Oakland was doing a favor to a guy. Olson signed a sweetheart contract because he's from Atlanta. He went home again. That was a nice thing they did. I mean, they also got a lot of talent. The Guardians don't really have a Pache, who at points has been considered one of the top 10 prospects in all of baseball. I mean, the star has fallen off him quite a bit. So we'll have to see, but he's not where he was, let's put it that way. But yeah, it's those deals fell apart. There's still, the Chapman deal wasn't a whole lot, and I talked about him on the show. Obviously, Story and Correa have signed. Correa to the Twins. Let's talk about this for a second. So, man, Houston fans are so mad. If you were kind of how did this happen? How did Correa end up going to the Twins? Well, there's two big things you have to take into account. The first one is that thanks to that deal where they got rid of Donaldson's contract, they had space. The Yankees essentially assisted the Twins getting Correa. If you're a Yankees fan, maybe you like that because it kept them out of going back to Houston, right? You made a trade. Maybe you got better. Maybe you didn't. We'll have to wait and see as a team. But that deal allowed the Houston Astros to get weaker. And the Astros are in a division that, Oakland is just completely waving the white flag. Seattle is hoping to take their step forward this year. Texas as well. It's a competitive division on paper, though we often see teams that win free agency actually win in the season almost never. So time will tell. But it was fascinating from that perspective that the Yankees essentially helped the Twins and hosed the Astros all at once. And two, Scott Boras became, the agent for Correa this offseason. And essentially what his contract is a one-year deal. It's a one-year deal with an opt-out. If he doesn't perform super well or if he gets hurt, he can opt back in, and there's safety in that. But if he had signed a multi-year deal, a chunk of that would have gone to his former agency. Since he signed this deal, if he opts out after 1 year, next year, the agency he went to would get nothing. So this is a deal that makes Boras significantly more money by just having Correa opt out after 1 year and then sign a new deal. Then they don't have to share a percentage. So there is also that, and I know, and I brought it up in the group chat, and some with the Houston guys were like, well, Correa had a choice to make. I'm like, yeah, but you hire Boras to get out of the way. no one tells Boris not to get the most money possible. And Boris was looking out for number one. I mean, he also, I am sure, got the best deal he could get. He always goes for max money. But this set up Correa to essentially have a 1-year opt-out. So the Twins move that money and they keep their flexibility in the future. We always hear about, flexibility, and rarely do we actually see it get applied. But the Twins are actually using it successfully. They took that flexibility. They signed, go back to when I was talking about division ranks and throw it all out the window. And the crazy, since I did those division ranks, the Twins have added Sonny Gray, Giovanni Urshela, Carlos Correa. Why am I blanking? We'll see what they flip Gary Sanchez for. He's still probably on the move to somewhere. They also are still chasing Frankie Montas, which will be interesting because if they go out and get Montas, I assume Larnach or Kirilloff will be one of those pieces because we already discussed they have too many outfielders right now, the way that team is set up. But additionally, the Twins' prospect pool is shrinking. I mean, they've made some pretty aggressive deals. There's a reason why. And a lot of their high picks just haven't worked out. Royce Lewis is hurt and hasn't quite paid off as that top overall pick. The guy they saved money with and went out and got, Blaine Enlow, hasn't worked for them. They've had some other players like Jordan Balzac, who has stepped forward, but they've had a lot of guys who just have not gotten there. So they don't have a ton of pieces, and Montes is going to be expensive. But again, with Oakland, it's like, please, Guardians, go talk about Ramon Laureano. He's sitting there, and we've talked about that his suspension maybe makes him a little bit cheaper to acquire, but also doesn't hurt the overall value in terms of what you're getting, and gives opportunities for someone to step up and get some playing time at the start of the year. But yeah, sorry, just mental shutdown there. But yeah, I'm curious to see what they do. I'm curious to see if the Guardians step up and do anything. Even I am starting to get a little frustrated, though. I'll still preach patience because there's still a lot of trade options out there. We have not seen the trade market get completely torn apart. We also have to comment and talk about the fact that Tito talked about, remember at the end of the season when it was Amed Rosario's the shortstop. He's the shortstop. Now it's like, well, he's going to spend some time in other spots. He might play some short. He might play some left. If they're setting him up to be like a left field bat occasionally, if you consider, I would think, Quan would in right potentially or left. Is there a platoon with them? I guess. Zimmer Mercado, how much do you trust Chris Valleca? If he can get to Zimmer, all the stuff is there. There's reasons why teams, I've talked to multiple Seattle writers who still want to trade for Zimmer because the defensive profile and the physical tools. So there's still that. And if you trust your new hitting coach, this is a prove it case. This could be the one that really you can make a name for yourself if you can fix Bradley Zimmer, because the physical tools are there. He just hasn't been able to put it together consistently. But yeah, something needs to be done. Right now is a golden opportunity for the Guardians. With everything going on with the Browns, we're not going to get into that, obviously. But that has fractured that fan base. There are a lot of people who are leaving and not coming back after the moves the Browns made. So Cleveland Guardians have a chance to step up, pick up some fans who are unhappy, pick up some fans that have decided to walk away and not spend their money on the football team. Do something, get some interest, go out and make a move. Laureano may not be I guess that's the thing is was Ramon Laureano really gonna be that exciting? That's the thing. You get right down to it. The sad state of baseball and its ability to promote its stars. It's even if they went out and traded for Brian Reynolds or Cedric Mullins, would that really excite a fan base? The diehards, yes, but the more casual fan, I don't know. And that's kind of the problem. It's when they went out and signed Edwin Encarnacion. They signed the biggest free agent contract in the history of the franchise, the biggest contract, I believe, in the history of the franchise, and got one of the premier free agents on that market who had fit a need this organization had had for a decade with a right-handed power bat. That was such a running joke that they couldn't have a right-handed power bat that at one point in time when I was early on Twitter, I made like a parody account that was just called Right-Handed Bat and made jokes about the Guardians not having one. You never followed it. It had like 10 followers, and I didn't have the follow through to stick with it. But yeah, it was the Guardians did that, and they didn't have an uptick in any of their ticket sales, and that was post the World Series year as well. They had weirdly similar sales that they had the years before. So it's kind of that. I get the whole idea. It's like, well, if we go out and trade for someone, it costs a lot of pieces, but when your roster is where it is, you need to consolidate. And then, yes, these may not be marquee moves, but they're moves that are going to make you better. And if your team is playing better, if this is a team, and I know you can also say, hey, when they were winning, nobody went. Yes, this is true. And they had stars, and they had wattage, and they had all these things. They're never going to win Cleveland. It's just the truth of the Guardians. They're never going to be the team in Cleveland. They're just not. Right now, the inaction will cause them to lose more fans, and that has been the big complaint for so long. And the situation with the Browns is going to give them an opportunity to gain more fans, because, again, it's not like I hear people going, oh, now I'm a Browns fan because they went out and traded for a quarterback with his history. I'm hearing from a lot of friends, family, and just random people on Twitter, oh, I am done with that team because of this reason. I'm not going to get into it anymore on the show, but just when you look at that and you consider the Guardians' perspective, it's like, here's an opportunity to pick up people. The Guardians have not, there was the Mickey Callaway stuff, and we talked about that in depth on the show. When he was in Cleveland, the worst of it that we really tracked was like him having an affair, and then Tito calling that person's husband to like, hey, can you not make a big deal out of this? Trevor Bauer was in Cleveland, but everything that's happened with him was after he left. The Guardians, when he was here, they talked about some of the personality issues that were concerning, just in terms of his time there, and they were ready to move on. So it's an organization that if you want to sell yourself as kind of an alternative, you have an opportunity right now. And you've got a lot of, like I've talked about, Shane Bieber's probably the nicest athlete I've ever met / interviewed. Go out and do something. Let's at least turn some positive heads. And honestly, it's a team that needs multiple moves. They do. We'll spend segment 2 and 3. This has been a super long segment 1, discussing like who is left in free agency at each position. They go for trade for a catcher. I mean, you can't just keep essentially having a pitcher, offensive production at catcher. I don't care how good Hedges is defensively. Go make that trade. Go make the Contreras Hap deal, and then still go make the Laureano deal, and then let Quan DH. Or if you're not set on Rosario because he's not a good defender at short, flip him. Find a team that needs a shortstop. How about Houston? Right? Pena's not ready to go. Well, here's what we'll do. We'll come back from commercial break. I'll throw an idea for a potential Rosario to Houston deal. And then we'll talk about what's free agency. What is left? What is the all free agency team right now? It's that time of year again, as college basketball's tourney is finally upon us. From all the latest odds, contests, and player props, BetOnline.net is the #1 source for all of your sports betting needs and info. BetOnline remains the best spot for all of your sports, scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information needs, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino games. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Okay, there's your okay, so now we're back. So here's the problem with the Houston Astros deal. I was like, okay, yeah, I talked about it. Let's go find. Man, that is they're kind of the perfect team to trade with in some regards because the depth is non-existent. And you go through and you talk about, someone like Altuve with his step back, Michael Brantley being 35. Yeah, Bregman, Jordan, that's a good core. Yuli Gurriel is going to be 38 this season. Sometimes you forget, he debuted later. Tucker's 25. McCormick and Myers are battling for center field, neither who are good as Straw, who they traded away. Pena, the son of Tony Pena, Jeremy Pena, out of the University of Maine. I wasn't that high on him in his draft year, I'll be honest. He's not quite there yet, and that's why I was like, hey, maybe someone. And then Martin Maldonado, the defensive catcher. And remember, they signed Nico Goodrum to be like a potential fill-in at shortstop if everything went wrong. Like, he's probably going to be the starting shortstop to start the year. That is why it would make some sense to trade them, Rosario, if the Guardians feel like Jimenez can play short and they want to, or Arias, if they want to start those young players. Okay, but that's well and good, but it's like, what would you ask for? So if you go and you look at the Astros' top prospects, not trading Pena, he's their one prospect of note. Corey Lee, the catcher, right now looks to be, if everything works out for him, Austin Hedges, right? Like 30, 35 great hit tool, plus power, huge arm behind the plate. Like, Corey Lee is just Austin Hedges all over again. Hunter Brown is an interesting arm in the upper minors. I mean, Pedro Leon, but I can't see them moving him when they already have their own outfield issues. As Forrest Whitley, someone you want to see if you can help stay, Houston's not a slouch when it comes to pitcher development. The fact that he's been completely unable to stay healthy, there's nothing here. And their bench, I mean, Jose Siri, who was, I believe, waived by the Reds and anyone could have had, there isn't much here. They are a team that really does not show a lot. Like, I mean, even going through their upper minors, it's like Joe Perez is kind of interesting just because he's been beat up so much. I mean, I liked Ross Adolph coming out of Toledo. Alex McKenna was Cal Poly. Matthew Barefoot, what D2 program was he? He made a big name for himself on the Cape. Colin Barber, I know, is someone a lot of people like. Tyler Whitaker, their pick. Their second rounder last year out of, was he from Bishop Gorman in Vegas? I can't remember. There's some guys, some names, but it's like, honestly, I just kind of look at them and I'm like, maybe their draft pick. Like, I believe they have a competitive balance pick, right? And I was like, Taylor Jones. I remember kind of liking him at one point in time. He hasn't really done anything when given an opportunity. 6'7", 230-pound first baseman, and Ross Adolph. I was kind of curious. I mean, he continues to hit. Say what you will. His runs created plus was a 111 last year. His first year in the Mets, with the Mets, it was a 125 and a 104 in low and high A. Slow played for a guy who, is 25 years of age. Only 65 games a year ago as well. You'd like to see more. I don't know if he was hurt or what was going down there. But he's played well. He was the guy who got traded from the Mets over in that J.D. Davis deal. So, yeah, I don't know. Any trade with Houston is hard to figure out just on the basis of I don't know what you get and I don't know what you ask for, and they have no depth. They would probably gladly take Straw back. I know they like Chas McCormick and they like Jake Meyer, and that's why they made that deal, but they don't have... If anyone gets hurt for Houston, they don't have anyone to step up, and that's going to be interesting for them. The depth is non-existent on that team. So let's get into the all-free agent team. Who is left? What is our market bearing out now that guys have been signing left and right? Let's just dive in now. So we started the catcher position. Jeff Mathis, Stephen Vogt, Jose Lobaton. Those are your names. It's ugly. This is why they went out and signed. I mean, Drew Butera has been a pretty reliable backup type, but there's not even a ton of those. So when you get right down to it, the Indians went out and signed Luke Maley because there's nothing out there. Like, they had a guy who can at least be a backup catcher, which is better than a lot of what's on the market. And that's, again, if you have to let him go, you let him go. But, at least he brings some value. First base, it's listing Greg Bird. I'm pretty sure he signed a minor league deal. I thought I saw Jose Martinez, son of Carlos Martinez, who's struggled the past few years. Mitch Moreland, who was not the same guy after he left Boston. Ryan McBroom. Those are your first basemen. I guess I also failed to mention the Luke Voit deal. That was a kick in the pants, was it not? Luke Voit for Alex Lang. I talked about it a bit online. It's interesting. Like, I get it if you're the Yankees, because, like, I think about Alex Lang, and I think about Ryan Eddies, and I think about Zach Hess, and I think about all, basically since Nola left LSU, every single pitcher who has come in as a draft eligible, who's had, like, a first, second, or third round grade, has disappointed in their junior year and not made a developmental step. They got a new coaching staff there, and we'll see if things turn around, but they've had some issues with pitcher development, and Lang was a pretty big arm for them. Justin Lang, right? Yeah, because wasn't there also an Alex Lang who was there? Are those two related? Do I have the wrong name? Or no, wait. Did I butcher this? Yeah, I got this wrong. Even when I was talking about it. And now I'm talking about it, I realize what I'm saying. The Lang I was thinking of... Okay, so this is me being an idiot. The Lang I was thinking about, as I'm sitting here talking about it, was the pitcher Lang. So that tweet was awful from last week. The one who went to the Yankees, Justin Lang, was a big Texas arm, threw really hard, late first round grade, just your typical big throws hard righty, no control. Now, why this is an interesting trade for the Yankees is San Diego is just awful at pitcher development. That's why they went out and added Niebla. So this is a big arm, potential mid to back end upside. I was confusing him with Alex Lang. Now I feel like an idiot because I even did that in our group chat and no one corrected me. Oh, come on, people. When I talked about him going to LSU, no one stepped up. But Justin Lang was, he was like considered in that like 5 to 10 range of prep arms in that class. And I just remember mocking him maybe a little bit higher than he went, but it was about the right range. And it was just San Diego taking a swing on a talented arm. And then he didn't get to pitch because, look at when he's drafted. It's the 2020 draft, and that's its own disaster. He pitched very little last year. So for the Yankees, they get a big-bodied guy with some velocity who has some upside. And he goes from a place with pretty terrible development to a good one. And, he was back end of the... Let's put it this way. The Guardians, I think, could have topped this deal. But the one caveat I put in this is... I'm pretty sure the Yankees did this deal. Not the Guardians could top this. That's no doubt. The caveat, though, is I think the Yankees were looking to clear a 40-man spot. Lang doesn't have to be added for a while. There's value in that. And the Guardians cannot really add anyone without trading away someone who needs to go in the 40-man. So I think there was some... you have to look at that balancing in there when you consider that was part of why the Yankees made this trade. Now, overall... The first base market is a disaster. I'd still love to see this team go out and actually do a simple, cheap upgrade at that position. It's not hard to do. You could find someone. We talked about Frank Schwindel. I'm just not sold on Bobby Bradley. They seem, but this is an organization that gave Jake Bauers every opportunity. I feel like we are setting up to see Bradley get another look, even though he has shown to be exactly what it's always mystifying. Like, Daniel Johnson showed more upside in the minors than Bobby Bradley has. Johnson just didn't get a look. Bobby Bradley gets more looks when he's shown to be exactly what he is. It's a little bit frustrating. Let's take this commercial break. We're going to come back and talk about the rest of the infield on today's show. Sponsor number 2 is Built Bar. And as you know, I don't read the ad read for Built Bar. I just sit here. You can hear me clicking away. Let's go see what's happening over at Built Bar today. See if they are going to entice me to buy. I have more than on one occasion ended up doing an ad read and then going and buying from them over at BuiltBar.com. I always use the promo code LOCKED15. And then as I talked about, you build up your Built Bucks, you do a few offers, and you get to save 15%, and then you're saving 5% with your Built Bucks. It all comes together well. Right now, limited releases. The lemon cheesecake is gone, so it's just the ruby chocolate and the caramel almond delight. I like the caramel almond delight. I must be in the minority. The churro puff is a really good one, though. I would highly recommend that. I enjoyed my banana cream pie. And even though it's like a puff, it's like a marshmallow interior, it's still 140 calories, 17 grams of protein, 6 grams of sugar. It gets an A in my health food app, and it gets an A by my belly. Go to BuiltBar.com today. Remember to use that promo code LOCKED15. Remember that is BuiltBar.com, promo code LOCKED15. So let's go quickly through this infield as we talk about what's left. So, second base, you're looking at guys like Mike Freeman, Jed Lowry, Asdrubal Cabrera, Joe Panik. Again, I'm always good for an Asdrubal reunion. He has been an effective hitter for quite a few years in a backup role. Not as much last year, but third base, Brandon Drury, Todd Frazier, Matt Duffy. yeah, it's not a great group left. Let's be honest. Like Kyle Seager, if he would unretire, is probably one of the best players left in this market. Shortstop, Jody Mercer, Freddie Galvis. It's that level. It's the defensive first, and pretty much defensive only types. And when you get to outfield, there is Conforto. And again, we've talked about like the issue with Conforto is he's going to cost you a draft pick. There's also Dexter Fowler. I mean, Tommy Pham hit well a year ago. He's probably the most interesting outfielder who isn't going to cost you something. And after that, there's really not a whole lot left. There's not a lot of guys when you go through this list. You're like, Mike Tauchman. I mean, I know a year ago I was big on him, but right now there's a reason why he doesn't have a job. Brian Goodwin, same deal. I'm really hoping the Guardians will at least consider Pham. Now the defense isn't there, but we've talked about some of the guys they ran out there defensively in the past are much worse than Tommy Pham. They ran out, Domingo Santana, who's about as bad as it gets. Pham last year, I mean, he was a league average bat, a little bit better than he was in 2021, 230 average, which was a pretty big drop for him. 341 on base. He's always walked at a high rate. 383 slugging for him, so not a ton of power. In San Diego, he's been traditionally more of a 20 home run guy, and that fell behind. If I were to go to advanced stats, I'm just kind of curious to look at his BABIP and see, if he was unlucky, if, how much is. I feel like we already looked at him at one point. It's like there is just some natural decline for him, as we've seen. He walked 13% of the time, struck out 22% of the time. His runs created plus was 102, which, I mean, again, for the Guardians outfield, that's fantastic. A 280 BABIP, so about league average-ish. He's definitely not someone you want to give a multi-year deal to, but, I mean, if you did like a 1-and-1 with a buyout, he would probably jump, and with a market with not really a lot left. And the Guardians are kind of at this point now. Like, the market is done. Tommy Pham, Michael Conforto, that's about as interesting as it gets. So if they want to upgrade this team, it has to be through trades. It has to be sitting down and seeing what's going to happen. There's some talk that they're going to... Oscar Gonzalez is going to get an opportunity. And he hit for a lot of power. But, they for someone who they're saying they didn't add him to the 40-man, right? Like they could have, they were going to risk him in the Rule 5. And there was, like, if they really truly believed he was a starter, a potential starter, I just can't believe that they would have done that. I can't believe that they would have just not protected him. Right now we're probably looking at like Austin Hayes, Ramon Laureano, or Sean Murphy, Austin Meadows. Free agency, it's Tommy Pham. Again, I don't think they're going to go for Conforto and the loss of draft picks, which have just meant so much to them. We're getting closer and closer to just left field Amed Rosario. Or Amed Rosario, I should say. It's that could be it. And, I mean, I don't know what they're going to do. Like, the promise was to spend. And if they sit back and literally do nothing to improve this team, if they do less than they did last year, where they added Eddie Rosario and they went out and added, Cesar Hernandez, you don't even have those type of guys left. With Solar signing with the Marlins, with Jock Peterson signing with the Giants for only $6 million. It was not a big deal. The market's been picked over. Teams moved quickly, and, I was preaching patience, and they were going to see who's left standing. Problem is, there isn't anything left standing. And there still could be teams, again, I mean, it's essentially there's two interesting outfield bats, and that's about it. I don't know who else is really going to be looking to add an outfield bat, who might be chasing. It's going to be kind of fascinating to watch and see. I'm not sure where Conforto is going to end up, but the Guardians honestly need to be in on Pham. They need to make a trade. Meadows is hard because Tampa is in the same situation as Cleveland, and Cleveland needs to kind of do a 4-for-1. That's why Laureano makes sense. It's also why, like, Ian Happ makes sense, or Wilson Contreras. It's like, so Murphy and Laureano would be, like, the really expensive. The El Cheapo version is Contreras, who's a 1 year, and Happ, who's a 2 year. Like, that still is a massive improvement for the team if they go out and do that. So they need to do that. They need to go out and do something. But it does seem more and more that your outfield is shaping up between Miles Straw in center field, Amed Rosario in left, and right field being Kwan and Palacios, which, I mean, I like the idea of playing Kwan in right field and seeing if all of the projections and everyone's faith in him is well placed. But, and that would be, if they don't do anything this offseason, it's a kick in the pants to a fan base that has been constantly kicked in the pants in terms of top talent leaving and ownership not spending. And again, there's really not an excuse to not spend, unless it is, the only excuse to not spend right now is because everything isn't finalized with minority ownership, and that I have to essentially, keep the books neutral until that is officially done. But if that is the case, then why wasn't, that should have been ready to go the minute this lockout was over. So they could have quickly moved into acquisition mode. And I know they've been active on the trade market and attempted, but finishing second, it doesn't matter if you finish second or 15th. You still didn't get the guy, so who cares? But yeah, it's I get frustration. If your frustration is rising, it's totally acceptable and understandable. I mean, my frustration is getting there. I have been Jeff Ellis. This has been Locked On Guardians podcast. I want to thank you for listening, making Locked On Guardians your first listen today and every day, wherever it is that you get podcasts. Remember to download daily, rate and review, subscribe, comment, like on the YouTubes as well. And as we end every show now, go Guardians, go.